Okay, I want you to picture a scenario. It's a Sunday morning, maybe 10:03 a.m.
Okay.
You're in Brentwood, California, and you're sitting in a dentist's waiting room. It's quiet, maybe some soft jazz is playing, you're flipping through a magazine, normal stuff.
Right. Very normal.
Suddenly, from the back room, the silence is just shattered, screaming. And I don't mean like an ouch, that hurt kind of yelp. I mean a man shouting at the absolute top of his lungs.
That'll wake you up.
Oh, it gets specific. The guy screaming, "Pig fucker! You fucking cock fucking pig fucker!"
That is, wow. That's descriptive and pretty terrifying. And if you're Matt Damon, which is who this story belongs to, you're probably looking for the exit.
Exactly. Damon is just sitting there completely frozen. The dental assistant comes rushing out, looking totally rattled, mask askew. And she says, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Damon. I'll be with you in a moment. We've got Hunter in the chair."
And just like that, it all makes sense. Hunter, of course, being the late legendary gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson.
The one and only. So a few minutes later, Thompson comes stumbling out. He spots Matt Damon, stops dead, looks him up and down, and yells, "You're sitting down with this guy. He's an assassin."
Yeah.
Talking about the dentist.
Of course he is.
And then, and this is the detail that just kills me, he hands Damon this jug of clear fluid he's carrying and says, "Here, you're going to need a sip of this."
Please tell me that wasn't water.
It was moonshot. Straight ethyl alcohol. At 10 in the morning on a Sunday, Damon takes a sip and his eyes practically pop out of his head.
That is such a perfect Hunter S. Thompson story. It's chaos, it's chemically fueled, it's larger than life. But what I love is that this wild story was actually the icebreaker for a much bigger, much more serious conversation.
It really was. This all comes from Matt Damon and Ben Affleck sitting down for this massive 3-hour marathon on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, the transcript of episode #2440.
Right. And, usually when we see actors on press tours, let's be honest, it's pretty glossy. It's all rehearsed.
Oh, totally. The director was a visionary. We had so much fun on set. It's just fluff.
It is. But this was so different. This wasn't just two buddies swapping war stories. I mean, clearly there was some of that. This was a deep dive into the actual machinery of Hollywood.
Yeah, they're talking about their new movie, R.I.P., but really what they're doing is unpacking how they're trying to completely disrupt the business model of making movies.
And we are going to get into all of that today. We're looking at the economics of streaming, why that model is, well, basically broken. We're talking the existential threat of AI, the human moat that might save us, and the brutal psychological cost of being truly great.
It's a real look under the hood of an industry that is in a total identity crisis right now. And what's so interesting is that Affleck and Damon, they're not just complaining, they're trying to build a new boat.
So let's start with the money. Because Ben Affleck went on this tear about how the movie business is just fundamentally broken. I think most people assume that if a movie's on Netflix, the actors get paid every time someone watches it, like a song on Spotify.
Yeah, and that's the common misconception. To really get why Ben is so frustrated and why they started their company, Artists Equity, you have to look at how the industry worked for 50 years.
Okay, so you had your salary up front.
Right, your fee.
Yeah.
But you also had residuals.
Let's unpack that for a second. Residuals are basically royalty checks, right?
Essentially, yes. If a movie was a box office hit or sold 1 million DVDs or, played on cable TV, little checks would keep coming in to the actors, the writers, the directors.
And that's how the middle class of Hollywood survived.
Exactly. Not the superstars.
Yeah.
We're talking the character actors, the camera operators, the grips, the people who work job to job. Those checks kept the lights on between gigs.
So the mailbox money. But then streaming comes along and just changes all the plumbing.
It destroyed the plumbing. Because with Netflix, there's no ticket sold. You pay your monthly subscription, you watch whatever. There's no direct line between I watch The Town and Ben Affleck gets X dollars. The data is hidden. The residual just dried up.
So the safety net is gone. And this is where their new company, Artists Equity, comes in. They're trying something that sounds almost, socialist. But Ben explicitly says it's self-serving.
It's such a fascinating idea. They're introducing a concept they call the crew bonus.
That's unheard of, right?
Completely. In the old model, only the top stars or maybe the director get points on the back end.
And points is just jargon for a piece of the profits.
Right. If you're Tom Cruise, you get points. If you're the key grip, you get an hourly wage. End of story. But for their movie, R.I.P., they negotiated a deal where if the movie does well, the entire crew gets a bonus.
I loved his argument for this. It wasn't just, being the nice guy. He said the crew makes a demonstrable difference. If the camera operator or the set dresser is financially invested, the movie's just going to be better.
It's basic incentive alignment. I mean, if you know doing a great job might mean an extra $10,000, $20,000 in your pocket, you're not just punching a clock. You're a filmmaker. You care if the lighting is perfect.
But that's the tricky part, right? How do you even calculate success on streaming if the numbers are all secret? There's no box office.
And that was the innovation. They actually sat down with Netflix and hammered out this tiered system. Think of it like baseball. They set specific viewership metrics for the first 90 days.
So it's like a single, a double, a triple, a home run.
Precisely. If the movie hits a certain number of hours viewed, the bonus pool increases. And they were joking about the highest tier, the Grand Slam.
Oh, yeah, didn't they say it was something totally impossible?
Yeah, they joked that a Grand Slam would require something absurd, like 110% of all Netflix subscribers to watch it.
Which would basically mean we'd all have to create fake accounts just to watch it again.
Right. But the point is, they're reintroducing a meritocracy. They're telling the crew, if we win, you win. Damon mentioned their camera operator, Colin Anderson, who's a legend. When you have people like that who feel respected and invested, the whole energy on set changes. It's not just a job, it's a mission.
Sounds amazing for the workers. I can't imagine the old studios are thrilled about that precedent, though.
Probably not.
Let's pivot to the art itself. Because they spent a lot of time on this war for our attention.
This was the part of the conversation that felt the most uncomfortably relatable to me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm so guilty of it. I'll be watching a movie, and 5 minutes in, I'm checking my email, I'm scrolling. Our attention spans are just fried.
We're all guilty of it, and the scary part is that Netflix knows it. Ben shared this detail about the first 5 minutes rule. Netflix has this incredibly granular data. They know exactly when you tune out. So now executives are giving notes like, we need a big explosion in the first 5 minutes.
Just to stop people from clicking away. It's fear-based storytelling.
Exactly. They are engineering the content to combat the scroll. It's the TikTokification of cinema.
Right. Ben compared it to the movies of the 70s. He brought up, what was it, The Verdict or Taxi Driver?
Perfect examples. Think about Taxi Driver. It's slow. It's atmospheric. It lets the story air out. If you put that on Netflix today, the algorithm would probably flag it as a failure because nobody gets shot in the first 10 minutes. The pacing is deliberate.
Ben used this analogy that I thought was so profound. He said going to a movie theater used to be like going to church.
I loved that. You go at an appointed time, you sit in the dark with strangers, you commit to a shared experience, no distractions. You're there to, in a way, worship at the altar of the story. It's a ritual.
But watching at home?
At home, the lights are on, the dog's barking, your phone is out. Ben even said executives now suggest reiterating the plot multiple times in the dialogue because they know you're scrolling Instagram while the movie is playing. They just assume you're only half listening.
That is just... It's incredibly depressing. It feels like a race to the bottom. You're not paying attention, so we'll make it dumber, which makes you pay attention even less.
It's a feedback loop.
Right.
But there was a glimmer of hope.
Yes. This story about Ben's son, the kid is 13, right?
Right. And he's glued to short-form content. Ben showed him a movie trailer, and the kid just rolls his eyes and says, you guys should hire TikTok editors. Which, ouch.
That's brutal from your own kid.
But then something changed. He discovered Letterboxd. For listeners who don't know, it's a social media app for movie lovers. It treats film seriously.
Okay. And
Ben's son starts logging movies, and suddenly he's watching the classics, the king of comedy, Taxi Driver. And he realizes that this long-form patient storytelling is actually way better than the quick dopamine hits he was used to.
It proves the hunger for quality isn't gone. It's buried under a lot of noise. If you give people something well-made, they eventually realize it's better.
Which brings us to the ultimate cheap stuff generator, artificial intelligence.
The robot in the room. This is what everyone in Hollywood is terrified of. The fear that AI will replace actors, writers, everyone. But Ben and Matt had a very pragmatic view.
They did. They see it as a tool, like visual effects or electricity. Ben said, use it for the drudgery. If you need to render a background, sure, use AI. But they were very firm on what it can't do.
This was my favorite part of the whole deep dive, the concept of the human mode. And they use this amazing story about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to prove it.
It's so good.
And usually when I think of The Rock, I think of, action movies, the eyebrow raise, khaki shirts. I don't think of deep, traumatic acting.
And that's why this story is so powerful. They were talking about a movie called The Smashing Machine, where The Rock plays MMA fighter Mark Kerr. And there's a scene where the character has overdosed, he's in the hospital, his friend comes to visit, and The Rock, this massive, larger-than-life guy, just pulls the hospital sheet over his head and starts crying.
So Matt Damon asked him, where did that come from? Was that in the script? And Dwayne said, no, I improvised it.
And here's the why. Dwayne explained that he pulled from two specific traumatic memories. The first was his father, who had substance abuse issues and would deflect and deny. The second was when his mother was diagnosed with cancer. She pulled a sheet over her head like a scared child.
So you have this movie star channeling his dad's denial and his mom's terror and synthesizing those two real painful memories into one gesture, pulling a sheet over his head.
And that's the point. That is the moat. An AI can generate a video of a man crying. It can make it look photorealistic. It can make the tears glisten. It can analyze 1 million videos of crying to find the average expression of sadness.
Right.
But it cannot access the lived experience of a father's addiction or mother's cancer diagnosis to make an artistic choice about vulnerability.
It can mimic the result, but it can't replicate the source.
Exactly. That specific emotional synthesis, that's human. That's the moat technology can't cross.
It's kind of reassuring, isn't it, that our trauma is actually our competitive advantage against the machines?
Yeah. In a dark way, yes. It suggests art requires lived experience. And speaking of suffering and obsession, the conversation, of course, shifted to the UFC.
It's Joe Rogan. All roads lead to the octagon eventually, but it wasn't just who can punch harder. It was about the psychology of obsession. They talked a lot about Jon Jones.
Arguably the greatest all time. But the way they described him, he's like a terrifying genius. They talked about his fight IQ. There was that specific spinning back kick he used to knock a guy out.
Oh, he buried his heel in the guy's liver. Matt Damon was practically shuddering describing it.
But it wasn't a lucky shot. Jones had studied the tape. He saw this tiny flaw in the opponent's defense, a little opening, and he practiced that one kick relentlessly just for that one moment.
That's the difference between an athlete and a master. But what really struck me was the conversation about what that level of focus does to a person.
It's the idea that to be that elite top 0.0001%, you have to be obsessed to a degree that's almost pathological. It destroys relationships. You can't be a normal, balanced person and also be Jon Jones.
There was that incredible quote from Matt Hughes, another UFC champ. Rogan said Hughes told him that when he finally lost his title, his first feeling wasn't sadness. It was relief.
Relief. Just think about the weight of that word. Being the hunted, the champion everyone wants to destroy, is this heavy burden. Losing let him be human again.
And they contrasted this with acting. An athlete has such a tiny window. An MMA fighter might have 9 years before their body just falls apart.
If they're lucky.
But actors, Matt and Ben can keep getting better into their 50s, 60s, 70s. Although they did mention the terrifying era of TRT Vitor.
Oh, God, the science project.
The listeners who don't follow MMA, we have to explain that. The visual is just insane.
So there was this period where the fighter Vitor Belfort was on testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, and Rogan described him as a raging gorilla. He said he literally had muscles on his teeth.
Wow.
It was this terrifying example of chemically trying to extend that window of greatness, just turning a human into a lab experiment to avoid the decline.
I think I prefer the Matt and Ben method of just aging gracefully and making movies.
Yeah.
And speaking of them, their dynamic it's just fascinating. They've been friends since they were kids, and you can really feel it in how they work together.
There's a level of trust there that allows for incredible risk-taking. They talked about a scene in R.I.P. Ben is screaming at Matt's character, just yelling, "I don't trust you. Tell me what's going on."
And the script probably had Matt arguing back.
Probably. But Matt decides, in the moment, to just blank him. He gave him nothing, just stared at him with dead eyes.
Which infuriated Ben. Right. Like real frustration.
It did. Ben actually improvised the line, "I would never have fucked you like this." That wasn't in the script. It was a raw reaction from one friend to another, feeling betrayed by the silence.
Look, because they have that foundation, they can go there. There are no egos. Matt said it feels easy when you work with the greats. You just ride the wave.
It's the no ego rule. When you have nothing to prove to each other, you can focus on the work. It's such a contrast to the athlete's lonely obsession. Here, greatness comes from collaboration.
They ended the whole conversation on a surprisingly philosophical note. I mean, it started with moonshot, and it ended with forgiveness.
It did. It was sparked by the new Knives Out movie they're involved with, Wake Up Dead Man. They were talking about the themes of grace. And their argument, and they were careful not to take political sides, was simply that a world without forgiveness is unlivable.
Right. It sort of touched on cancel culture, but from a human perspective, if you define someone entirely by their worst moment, there's no path forward. Ben said something like, if you nailed being human, that's impossible because you forgot the part about forgiveness.
It really connects back to the start of our whole conversation, whether it's the broken business model where crew are treated like cogs, or the isolating nature of streaming. We're losing that human connection. Their whole mission with artists' equity, it seems to be an attempt to bring that humanity back, to make movies that feel handmade, as Ben put it.
Handmade tables versus IKEA. We want the handmade stuff.
We do. And as AI gets better at making the IKEA furniture of art, that generic, technically perfect content, I think we're going to crave the flawed, painful, sheet-over-the-head moments even more.
So here's the question I want to leave you with today. We talked about how AI can't replicate trauma because it hasn't lived it. But let's say 10 years from now, an AI could mimic that vulnerability perfectly. If it could generate a scene that made you cry just as hard as The Rock's did, would it matter to you that it wasn't real? Or is the knowledge of the artist's pain the only thing that actually makes the art valuable?
That is the billion-dollar question.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Go watch a movie without looking at your phone today. We'll see you next time.